Now, again, I don't want to oversell this at all. I think I've seen quotes and I've heard things that Trump believes that no one can attack him for not supporting Israel when we're giving billions of dollars a year to Israel. So I'm not saying like around the corner the U.S. is going to stop sending billions of dollars a year to Israel or cut them off. That's almost impossible to imagine. But any sort of reorienting of priorities where we're not placing Israel on an equal plane to U.S. interest or even above, as we've been doing, could have major positive repercussions in terms of war and other things. Now, speaking of Israel loyalists, and by the way, my saying that would be outlawed and subject to punishment under this new expanded anti-Semitism hate speech code that Trump is imposing on American colleges is an example of something called that's something viewed as anti-Semitism, to accuse any Jewish person of having greater loyalty to Israel than their own country. But speaking of Israel loyalists, Ben Shapiro of the Ben Shapiro Show was petulantly complaining and whining throughout his show that Trump is not doing enough for Israel, Trump is deprioritizing Israel. Here's just a little snippet of his rant this morning.
Really what Hamas is attempting to do is basically settle all outstanding business with the United States so as to then create separation between the United States and Israel in Iran negotiations. That is what is happening with the Houthis as well. It is not a coincidence that as the Houthis are basically forswearing attacks on American shipping, and the United States is saying that the United States is no longer going to worry about the Houthis, essentially, that Hamas is now trying to do the same by releasing the sole living American hostage in the Gaza Strip, trying to basically say that the United States now has no part in that conflict. Well, okay, fine. I mean, if the United States has no part in that conflict, then Israel should just go and do what they need to do. That seems to me a proper solution with regard to the Gaza Strip.
Do you see how mad he is at the very notion that the U.S. may not consider the war in Gaza to be our war? And I think he's essentially saying that the reason Trump wanted that American out is so that no more arguments could be mounted about why the U.S. has some responsibility to care about the war in Gaza because Americans are held hostage there. Now, the whole thing, that whole premise is obscene from the start because this American hostage, as I said, is not just some innocent American civilian who decided to go visit Israel on a tourist trip and got kidnapped by Hamas. He was in Israel because he went to Israel to fight in their army. He became a soldier in the IDF. And he was captured in uniform on active duty. And this idea that if an American citizen goes to fight for some foreign country, like an American goes to fight for Ukraine and gets captured by Russia, or an American goes to fight for Russia and gets captured by Ukraine, or Iran and gets captured by whoever, whatever foreign country they decide they want to go fight for and wear the uniform of a foreign country, it doesn't become the U.S. government's responsibility to consider that war now our war, because one of our citizens went and enlisted in a foreign army and decided to fight that war. But okay, let's assume that he's an American citizen even though he's an Israeli IDF soldier too, and therefore the Trump administration should care about getting him out. I think that's reasonable. They should care, not necessarily make the war their war, but I think it's appropriate for the U.S. government to try and negotiate his release as they did. But now Ben Shapiro is saying, oh, this seems to have been done specifically because Trump wants to say that the war in Gaza is not our war. It isn't our war. It never was our war. Hamas has never attacked the United States, has no aspirations to attack the United States, has no capabilities to attack the United States. They're exclusively a militia of resistance designed to fight against Israeli occupation of their territory, of their land. That's what they are. That's in their charter. That's historically what they've done. That's what they do. That's their function. I can see why Israel would consider them to be in their own interest, but not the United States. Same argument about Ukraine. Ukraine is definitely in Russia's interest. It's right on the other side of their border. But how is it in the U.S. interest to fight a war to determine who governs various provinces in eastern Ukraine? Like, what difference does that make to American citizens? And of course, the same is true for the war in Gaza, but Ben Shapiro cannot abide the notion that the wars of the United States should be fought for American interests and not Israeli interests, because he sees no distinction between those two things. And also when he says, like, oh, well, fine, if the Americans want to consider Gaza only Israel's war, then the Israelis should go do what they have to do. First of all, Israel is doing what they quote unquote have to do. Ben Shapiro's like a tough guy, like, yeah, then they're going to go in and do what they have to do. They're committing genocide. They're ethnically cleansing Gaza right out in the open. They've destroyed all civilian life in Gaza. They've killed tens of thousands of people, including 20,000 children. And there's a report in The Lancet suggesting that that count is much higher. I think clearly that's the minimum count. People are still buried under the rubble and like. But also, the Israelis can't do anything without American assistance. They could never be fighting all these wars in Lebanon and Syria and taking land and occupying the West Bank and bombing the West Bank and cleaning it out and then also fighting the war in Gaza without the U.S. lavishing it with aid and money. So if Ben Shapiro really wants to say, okay, fine, Gaza is not America's war, then Israel should do what they have to do, then argue that the U.S. should cut off Israel's aid. That why should the U.S. keep paying for these wars? Forcing the American worker to subsidize Israel. Forcing our armed service members to be deployed in the region to protect Israel. Possibly going to a war with Iran to help Israel. Here's an NBC report also on these, what they call the strained Trump-Netanyahu relationship. Quote, disagreements on Iran and Gaza are straining Trump-Netanyahu relationship. Israel is, quote, worried about any deal Trump might strike with Iran, one source told NBC. Quote, Netanyahu is blindsided and infuriated this past week by Trump's announcement that the U.S. was halting its military campaign against the Iranian-backed Houthis in Yemen after the Houthis agreed to stop firing on U.S. ships in the Red Sea. The Houthis had just attacked Israel with a missile that hit close to Ben Gurion, Israel's main airport. When Netanyahu visited the White House last month for the second time since Trump took office, he hoped the president would pledge U.S. air support for a possible Israeli operation against Iran's nuclear facilities. The Israeli leader was taken aback when the president instead announced he would agree to direct talks with Tehran, the diplomat said. Quote, I think what you're seeing is the Israelis recognizing that as much as they welcomed the election of President Trump and thought that would really give them a blank check to pursue whatever agenda they wanted, Trump has his own agenda. Frank Lowenstein, a former Middle East envoy under the Obama administration, said during a virtual briefing organized by J Street, an advocacy organization that describes itself as both pro-Israel and pro-peace. Although Trump's diplomacy with Iran and the U.S. deal with the Houthis are, quote, anathema to Netanyahu, the prime minister does not have the political leverage in Washington or in Israel to enter into a direct confrontation with Trump, who is popular with Netanyahu's base in Israel, said Ilyan Goldenberg, who worked as a Middle East policy as a senior official during the Biden and Obama administrations. And that's why you see Netanyahu pretending that the U.S. and the Yemenis are working, the U.S. and the Israelis are working together when, of course, nothing can be further from the truth. 1775 Coffee just dropped their starter kit. So if you're scared to commit, and probably some of you are really scared, this is your chance. You already know where we back it. Now here's your excuse for finally trying it. You're getting $200 worth of a coffee and gear for just $99. Do you understand? $200 worth of coffee and gear only for $99. It's a steal in a world where coffee prices keep climbing and burnt beans in a white cup somehow cost $9. You get 3 full-size bags of their best coffee, the bold dark roast, the smooth medium roast, and their new anti-aging blend. Yes, coffee that actually tastes good and ages better. Exclusive merch is also involved, a Matty Black tumbler stamped with unapologetic freedom quotes, a gold spoon clip that keeps your coffee sealed, and a branded frother that does what it's told. I'm sick of frothers that are just having a mind of their own and just doing whatever they want. This frother does what it's told. All of it is single origin, small batch, mold free, and toxin free, and every bag is rated 85 plus on the cupping scale, which puts it among the top specialty coffees in the world, in the whole world, not just in the US, in the entire world. If you've been watching 7075 blow up on Rumble, and wondering if it's actually worth it, I can tell you it is. Go to 1775coffee.com/Glenn and grab your starter kit before it's gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that just stands for something like Rumble does. Start your day with coffee that not only tastes great, but actually backs what you believe. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.